meeting of the City Council of Waynesboro. Dr. Hofstadter, if you would please do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Just to remind folks in the audience this evening that if you wish to speak at the citizen comment period or public hearings, that you must sign up to do so in the back on the table back there. Appreciate you if you did that. Second item this evening is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Ms. Anderson, is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Hester, any discussion? All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Number 3, matters from council members. Do we have anything to share this evening? Anyone would like to bring up? A couple of things. Just want to make a note of thank the Waynesboro Police Department and Emergency Services for their coordination with both regional and state law enforcement over the weekend during the anniversary of the Charlottesville event last year. Appreciate their service. Also, to congratulate the same individuals, Waynesboro Police Department Emergency Services, for a job well done at the National Night Out event over at the Target. Got a little wet and windy there for a little bit, but it was a good turnout and a great event. Also to our friends over at the Waynesboro Public Schools, and appreciate everybody in the city kind of slowing down and watching for kids as they cross the street. And but all that I've heard has been a successful week. And that's. Do I have anything else? Okay. Hearing none. Number 4 on the agenda this evening is to hold a public hearing upon application of Kevin S. Morse Lewis, and consider introducing an ordinance approving by conditional use permit a bar and nightclub use in the local business district at 101 East Main Street, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map number 46-2-1-B. Mr. Hamp.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of council, our first order of business will be to consider receiving the report and recommendation of the Planning Commission. And following that, as the mayor just described, we'll conduct a public hearing this evening, and the council will be asked to consider introducing an ordinance approving the CUP, or the conditional use permit, anticipating that or assuming that an individual will introduce the ordinance. At our August 27th meeting, that ordinance will receive second consideration, and you'll be asked also to consider the dance hall permit. So our first step tonight is to consider receiving the report and recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Is there a motion to receive that report and recommendation of the Planning Commission?
I'll move that we receive it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Allen. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Anderson, is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Juday.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. There's actually 2 permits that we have for you to consider tonight that'll be voted on at the following meeting. One of them is by ordinance, a conditional use permit, and then one is by resolution. That'll be the dance hall permit. We haven't actually done a dance hall permit in quite a while, so there's no sort of set application form or system for that, but that can be done by resolution. The location is at 101 East Main Street. You may notice kind of a small white building just as you cross over the Main Street Bridge coming from City Hall. The applicant is representative of Impulse GSC. It's a private membership club operating in Charlottesville since 2013. They're focused on the LGBT community, that they allow any members who are have a, I'm trying to get the exact language here, but any members who have a positive attitude, supportive attitude towards the LGBTQ community. Non-members and guests are also welcomed at the club during certain hours. It's currently located in Charlottesville on Emmett Street. And the owners who live in Waynesboro are interested in relocating the business or opening another site here in Waynesboro at the 101 East Main Street location. Here's the subject property. can see it's surrounded by McCoy's, formerly McCoy's Furniture up there, Pinky's Car Wash, the DuPont Community Credit Union, and a number of other commercial uses around it. So tonight they need a conditional use permit, and just to clarify what each of these are for, the conditional use permit is because of the location, and it's specific to the property, to the 101 East Main Street site. And that's because the property is zoned LB, Local Business District. So this is actually a by right use in the CB, Central Business District, which would be right across the river, and also a by right use in the HB District, which is located along Broad Street and also around the highway and certain other areas. But in the LB district, the bar and nightclub use is by conditional use permit, which means that it may or may not be appropriate depending on the specific location of the parcel and any conditions that the council may want to impose. The applicant will also require a dance hall permit because they are an establishment that serves alcohol and has a dance floor but does not operate as a restaurant. This requires a $600 annual fee and may be awarded by resolution, not ordinance, and I'll discuss the requirements for those. As far as the zoning considerations, as I mentioned, the bar nightclub use is by right in the CB district and the HB district, but it's by conditional use permit in the LB district. In this case, the building is in the floodplain, but that doesn't affect a CUP. That's only an issue if the applicant invests more than 50% of the value of the building during renovation or if they construct a new structure. They're also in the corridor overlay district, which means that the visual impact should be considered, and we have some conditions, recommended conditions related to that. As far as the recommended land use for this area, the comprehensive plan land use map, which was passed in 2008, designates this as part of the downtown area and says that the emphasis in the downtown area is on mixed-use development and adaptive reuse of historic buildings. The city hopes to see the downtown area attract destination uses such as restaurants, art galleries, and other entertainment uses. It's sort of a question with LB whether this is more of a local commercial corridor or whether it's more tied to the downtown. We felt this specific location was closer to the downtown, and because it's in the comprehensive plan's downtown area designation, this would be an appropriate use to group in with the downtown businesses. There's a number of site plan requirements. Because this is a change of use for the building, the applicant will be required to submit a site plan. So you may note in other conditional use permits, we focus a lot more on the specifics of where they need to plant street trees or that type of thing. And that's usually because they won't have to go through a site plan. There won't be any change of use. And so the conditional use permit is our only opportunity to put conditions on, like street trees and that type of thing. In this case, because it's a change of use, the applicant will have to submit a site plan and go through the site approval process, which will require them to do all the normal things to come into conformance with the site development code. Here's the site plan from the applicant. What they're looking at is creating a patio area off to the left of the building. We've got street trees, parking lot screening, planters up near the front, and then have striped it into parking spaces as well. The property is in the corridor overlay district, which means that it's an important corridor to the city as one of our main thoroughfares. And so for that reason, we do enforce the corridor overlay guidelines. That means street trees will need to be planted on East Avenue, and that'll sort of shield the building from one direction as you're coming towards it, and then on the other side as well. And then we've also, we'll probably be requiring them to do planters along Main Street that will also contribute to the screening of the parking and bushes on one side. We also have a number of recommended conditions. This CUP comes with 10 recommended conditions from the Planning Commission, and I've kind of done them out of order just to bring them up kind of as they're relevant. So recommended condition number 8 is that the establishment owner shall be responsible for ensuring the area around the business is kept clean and free of trash, debris, and graffiti. Again, important because it is a corridor overlay district, though important in general. And then recommended condition number 9 is that the applicant shall follow the city's downtown design guidelines when making modifications or aesthetic improvements to the building. The guidelines state that buildings in this corridor shall not use garish, metallic, black, or high-intensity colors on the building. And the applicant has said that they're going to just repaint the building white and just give it a new coat of paint. And then for parking and access, the property won't generate sufficient peak traffic to affect the corridor. It's a very small establishment, so there's no access issue. And then with the parking, that's going to be a larger issue for the CUP. The project is likely to require, I think, 23 parking spaces will be what the zoning code ends up requiring of them. As it is, they can provide 16 by right under the ordinance, so they can provide 14 on-site and 2 immediately adjacent. That leaves us with several options to give them, for them to meet the rest of the parking requirement. One option is that council has some discretion in crediting parking spaces that are within 300 feet on the public right-of-way, and in this case, there are 12 additional spaces on the same block of East Avenue. Staff recommends that council direct us to credit these parking spaces to them since they're not used ever during the club's hours of operation. If council doesn't wish to do that, you can direct staff to not credit those parking spaces to them, and they'd be required to come up with a private agreement with one of the other owners within 300 feet, or to downsize their patio to reduce the parking requirement. For public safety and nuisance, this is probably the largest issue with this particular use, the bar and nightclub use. We felt it was an appropriate location because they're surrounded completely by commercial uses. There's no residential uses within 300 feet. But we've suggested a number of conditions anyway. Recommended condition number 2 deals with the hours of operation. Because the club is a private club and its ABC license is tied to that, they're not required to close at 2 a.m. like most public bars. And so in Charlottesville, their location is open until 4 a.m. or later. Staff did not feel that that was appropriate for the city of Waynesboro due to our the fact that we don't have a large scene of bars that are open that late to begin with, and that we have a smaller public safety resources. And so our first condition is that the establishment shall close to the public at 2 a.m. And may not reopen to the public until 6 a.m. And all partygoers shall leave the premises by 2 a.m. So basically, they'll have to close at the same time as other ABC licensed bars. Recommended condition number 3 is that no adult entertainment as defined in the zoning ordinance, section 10.3, shall be allowed on the premises. It's fairly straightforward. Recommended condition number 5 is noise. To prevent noise from carrying throughout the area, and especially to nearby residential uses, the doors shall be kept closed except as patrons enter and exit. The door shall not be propped open during operating hours. Those last 2 conditions related to noise are actually straight from the noise ordinance. So they're not necessary to put in there necessarily. We can enforce the noise ordinance on them anyway. But this makes the conditional use permit contingent on their following the noise ordinance. So it's just kind of an added caution. But the 6th recommended condition is that in accordance with the city's noise ordinance, no live music or any other form of entertainment shall be permitted in the outdoor area after 10 p.m. nightly. And any amplified music in the outdoor area should not be audible at a distance of 50 feet from the property line. And the Building and Zoning Department may disallow amplified music if substantiated complaints are received. And this is, again, not something that we generally have an issue with these types of businesses. Most folks exercise common sense in how they point speakers and deal with amplified music. But this gives us the ability, if they don't exercise common sense, to enforce that with the CUP. They're also required to receive a dance hall permit, according to the code, which has a number of requirements. The applicant has to be of good character, must consult with police chief on security concerns, and have to comply with the site development standards. And there's a number of standards that are listed in there, fire, parking, and lighting, that have been superseded by the site development code since the dance hall permit ordinance was passed in the early 60s. And so they'll have to comply with all those as part of the site plan process. The other 2 requirements, though, we don't get very many of these, again, so we don't have a clear process for evaluating them, but the staff feels that they've met the conditions. We're in luck here. It's difficult with these businesses or these types of establishments to evaluate how they're going to operate a lot of times, but in this case, it's an existing operation, and so we can look at their track record so far. Again, they've been operating in Charlottesville since 2013. We received comment from the Charlottesville Police Department, from the Charlottesville Commonwealth's Attorney Office, and the Virginia ABC. The Police Department and the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office both reported that the number of public safety incidents on the premises were consistent with the number you'd expect from any other business. And then the Virginia ABC sent a letter, which I've included in your packet, stating that no violations, suspensions, or revocations of ABC licenses have occurred over the 5-year period. We have included recommended condition number 7, which is that alcohol served or consumed outdoors must be kept in a designated serving area. Patrons may not carry or consume alcohol in the parking lot or on nearby properties or city right-of-way. That's an ABC regulation already, but the owner shall be held responsible for ensuring that alcohol originating from the establishment is not consumed in the parking lot or on nearby properties or city right-of-way. Basically saying that the owner is liable for alcohol that originates at their establishment. And then as far as the 3rd requirement for public safety, the applicant has contacted the police chief, so they've completed that requirement. And we've also included another recommended condition that makes them responsible for any additional security expenses that may be incurred. This is pursuant to the requirements for a dance hall permit in City Code Section 10.1. The business owner shall contact the chief of police to ensure adequate security measures are provided during operating hours and special events. If additional security services are necessary beyond those required by businesses generally, the provision of those security services shall be the responsibility of the owner. When we spoke to the Charlottesville Police Department, they noted that the owner had cooperated with them in the past to provide adequate security for the property. So staff recommended the approval with the attached conditions. Planning Commission held a public hearing in July and recommended approval 6-0 with the attached conditions as well. I can answer any questions or review any of the conditions. We did, the 10th condition is that we made the conditional use permit exclusively to Impulse GSC, and this is something standard that we've done with all bars in the past. Generally, when you give a CUP, it attaches to the property in perpetuity. So if we give a CUP, for instance, for auto body work at a particular property, that property can always be used for that use. In this case, the CUP is attached to the Impulse GSC to the establishment. And so if, for instance, if the owner, the applicant here tonight were to sell the establishment to someone else, it could continue to operate under the CUP. But if Impulse were to move to another location and then the owner of the building wanted to bring in a different nightclub with a different owner after a gap of operation, they would need a new CUP. They would not be able to always have a nightclub at that location. Any questions?
Is there a time of when the business will be in operation?
I believe that the applicant can come and answer that question in a minute, but I believe that they'll be operating from, I think they've said from about 8 to 2, Thursday through Sunday or something like that.
8 a.m. or p.m.?
PM. I know they're also occasionally open during the week for private parties or when it's rented out. But yeah, they'll have to close at 2 a.m. though.
Any other questions, Mr. Juday? Great, thank you. Normally have the applicants before the public?
We call on the applicant during the public hearing.
Okay.
So gavel the public hearing open, and then we'll call on the applicant.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I hereby open the public hearing. Mr. Ham, do we have anybody?
Sure. We'll call first on the applicant, as is our practice, Mr. Kevin Morris Lewis.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good. Yeah, I don't have any questions, but if you have anything else to offer that maybe Mr. Juday didn't cover adequately?
We're looking to open at 7 p.m. nightly and maybe expand days after we're in and seeing how well it is. We've lived here almost 2 years, and we have a huge support group on this side of the mountain, and we just feel that it's time to bring something like this over here to not only give a place for people who are the LGBT community, but those who are like-minded of that. And it also gives a place for up-and-coming young LGBT community to have a place to turn to. We've counseled a lot of young kids in the past, helped them find certain situations to further them from harming themselves, because there's a lot of that here lately. We've helped kids who've been thrown out of their parents' house. We're a nonprofit. Salty Dog is the name of the nonprofit that helps these children out. And we just want to give a place for people to have a safe place to feel comfortable and to be around people who are like them. We also encourage transgenders to be a part of our community, which we do have. And it gives them a sense of being, belonging, and knowing that they are who they are human, and they are a part of this society, and we pay into society just as much as anyone else, and we feel that we need this place, and I think it's a good place, and I live right around the corner from it, so it's pretty convenient.
Awesome.
But that's about all I can say.
Great. Any questions?
On a typical night, how many patrons do you expect?
Right now, I think we do it between, because we do different types of events during the night. Like on a Saturday night, we'll do a drag show. We get about 45 people, maybe 50 at tops. And then after the drag show, a lot of them will leave because majority of them live over here in Lynchburg and things. Then we'll get a night crowd after 2 o'clock. That is one thing that we're trying to get away from, is the nightclub scene. We don't want to be known as a nightclub anymore. We want to be known as a social club. The hours don't bother us over here. The only reason we do it over there is because the 2 o'clock crowd actually helps us obtain the money to do what we do in the community. And we're also looking into over here maybe starting like up Waynesboro Pride or some kind of events during the year to bring more revenue to the area to see, Waynesboro prosper a little bit.
What nights will you all be open?
Right now we're looking at Thursday through Sunday. Sunday we might be closing a little early, maybe 1 or something like that. It just depends on what the crowd is like.
And tell me more about what a social club versus a dance hall or...
I grew up in a time where you would walk down the street and you'd have a beer bottle thrown at you. You'd go back to your car and your car's bashed. We had a club which was called the Silver Fox back in the day in Charlottesville, and it was more like family. That's what a social club is. We have a lot of people who contact us and thank us for what we do. Giving a place to be themselves without feeling like they don't belong, or they just stay at home because they don't want to go out because they get ridiculed. A social club, in my opinion, is people who come together of like-minded and not only enjoy a night out, enjoy company and friendship, but they might meet new people. They sign up for volunteer things that we do around the community. It's more of a club for people to come together and do good and not just be labeled as a nightclub or a gay nightclub or, that's just, that kind of thing. We want it to be more of, a social club of people coming together with ideas of what needs to be done in the community, what we can do to prosper in this area, that kind of thing.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stephen Wolcott.
You would mind give us your name and an address for the record, please?
Name is Stephen B. Wolcott. I own 2 buildings in downtown Waynesboro, 665 North Bath Avenue, 933 Fairfax Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate this opportunity, and I humbly stand before you, and I respect each one of you for the position that you hold. And I hope that you respect the position that I hold. I am also a local pastor, and I share from my heart. We started this meeting by giving the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, one nation under God. So in my time, the short time that I have before you, I want to read what's on my heart because I represent Him. In Romans chapter 1, verse 26 says, "For this reason they gave them up to dishonorable passions. Their women exchanged the natural functions for what is against nature. Likewise, men, leaving the natural function of women, burned in their lust towards one another, men with men, doing which is shameful, and receiving in themselves the due penalty of their error. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not proper." Verse 32 says that who know the righteous requirement of God, and those who commit such things are worthy of death. They not only do them, but also give hearty approval to those who practice them. I'm here because the original vote was 6 yeas and 0 noes. Hearty approval. The word hearty approval means agreeing with or consent to, sympathize with. Points to the casual enjoyment of the sin of others. It is the highest expression of corruption when sin and sensual behavior become a form of entertainment. Today, many experience a great harm in society that can suffer when it separates itself with all kinds of crude and godless examples that fill many of our venues and entertainment, movies, books, magazines, theaters, and television. Yet many people, young and old, approve of and take pleasure in what will destroy them in the end. Even Christians can find themselves drawn to this hopeless path, using any number of misguided excuses. They may call it harmless fun, a means of socializing, an experience that teaches reality or keeps them to relate in culture. But being entertained by watching other people sin and encouraging in ungodly actions, even though you yourself may not participate, is no more pleasing in the sight of God's eyes. In Revelation chapter 21, verse 6, it says, "He said to me, 'It is done. I am the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give of the spring of the water of life to him who thirsts. He who overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. But the cowardly and the unbelieving, the abominable, the murderers, the sexual immoral, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and the liars shall have their portion in the lake which burns in fire and brimstone. This is the second death.'" God mentions several classes of people whose place will be in the fiery lake of burning sulfur. The cowardly are
Sorry to
those who
interrupt
lack
you.
faith.
Sorry to interrupt you. We're out of time. But I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Ms. Donna Bodwin.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you could state your name and address for the record.
My name is Donna Bodwin. I have a property at 456 North Delphine Avenue.
Great, thank you. And I didn't do a good job of the first time. So the light's going to turn green, it's going to flicker yellow, and then when it hits red, which is yellow, start to wrap up, and then and to conclude your comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I own a property that I've had for sale. It was a church. It was commercial. And when Waynesboro put the 4-lane highway through, there was no longer any parking to have it as a church. So we've been trying to sell. There's been several opportunities of cash buys that have been put down because of parking. They said it's a 3,600 square foot building, therefore we have to have 18 parking spaces, even though I suggested, hey, one of them was a barber shop that only wanted to use one room of the building. So my question here, although I do agree with him, and I lived in Atlantic City, New Jersey for a short period of time, and I actually was in a gay, went upstairs after hours because my husband worked downstairs. And I see what goes on in a gay bar, and I don't think you want it in Waynesboro. I wasn't gay at the time or anything, and there were several people there that I love the people, but I can't approve of what goes on, and I don't think you want that in this city either. And the main thing, I know that there's reasons why you have to do certain approvals and stuff, because I've worked in real estate and I realize, you can't discriminate. But I was shut down on a lot of things because of parking, even though I had permission from the church next door that I could use their parking. And I was told that there's no way, even though I had that permission to meet the requirements, there was no way that it could happen. And I suggest to you that this conditional use permit, that you shut it down if no other reason than parking alone, and what it will bring to this community that you do not want, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Hamp, I'd ask if you could maybe, we could get her name and address. We want to make sure that our planning department can reach out and perhaps building and zoning to communicate what flexibility there may be, what opportunities might exist with their property.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker, I'm going to struggle a little bit with the handwriting. I think it's Angus Butcher or, yeah. Okay, great.
Good evening. If you could, your name and address for the record.
My name is Angus Butcher. I live at 129 South Bath Avenue.
Awesome. Same.
Waynesboro.
Same with the.
Yes.
Thank you.
Me and my fiance, we used to live in Charlottesville. We lived here for about 2 years now. I very much enjoy it. I just want to bring something here for the community that is going to do well. And also, my fiance is an ordained minister and has married younger couples, older couples, and I just want to bring that here and further the community, not just gay couples. We married a straight couple last month. So I'm just looking forward to that, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Haley Morris.
Council members, do I need to state my name and address?
Please,
It's
yes.
Haley Rochelle Morris, 80 Anthony Circle, Waynesboro, Virginia, 22980.
Thank you.
And I am here to support the conditional use permit. I am a married straight woman. I frequent Mr. Morris's club in Charlottesville, and it is a social club. It is. I have met gay, straight, bisexual, transgender. I could not ask for a better group of people. You know, I heard one nation under God, and we really are. I have children. I have 2 teenagers, and I have a young son as well, all boys. And I am teaching them to be involved in the community, no matter what that is, no matter if that's church, no matter if that's helping their neighbor, helping their peers at school, supporting people, and allowing people to be who they are. For me, it's important that they're here travel-wise. I mean, I love Charlottesville, but what does the community now offer to the community, to the LGBT community? And who's to say that Mr. Morris is not going to adapt to the community? He's not going to say, there's a need for a space for children during the day. Children who have gay parents, who have bisexual parents, who have transgender parents. Who's to say that if we don't allow him to come in our community and be a part of our community and be supported by our community, how do we know what he can bring to our community? I feel so overwhelmed about the acts in Charlottesville, but even with that being said, Mr. Morris creates a safe environment. There is always security. I don't see any ruckus per se. I've never seen any physical violence. And I've been a frequent member of the club for 2.5 years. And he loves everyone. I don't go into the club and I don't feel unsafe and I don't feel like I'm not able to be myself. I'm not condemned there for being a straight married woman. I actually have my husband here with me today, and we totally back Mr. Morris, and we really hope that you will allow him to come into the community and see what the community's like and adapt to those needs of the community.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Douglas Cote.
Mr. Cote, if you could speak your name and address for the record, and same thing with the...
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Douglas Cote, 66 Highland Avenue, Verona, Virginia. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Morris. I've known him for about 1.5 years. He's not just an acquaintance that I've met. He's become a very dear friend. I want to say I really do appreciate your scripture that you spoke earlier. I really do. But as a gay man, that's the old way of thinking. I'm a gay Christian man myself. And unfortunately, that way of thinking and ministering and preaching keeps most of us in the closet and keeps most of us from seeking help in most of us end up getting hurt because there's no place to turn. There's no friends. We feel isolated. We don't know where to go. Until someone like Kevin comes around and says, I'm here. I got your back. I opened up a social club where you can come and just really be who you are, that you can be confident and stand up and know that you're safe and someone's standing with you. You're no longer standing alone. Our communities need people like Kevin today. Not just Waynesboro, but Charlottesville. Charlottesville will lose a great asset when Kevin moves his club over here. I'm sure of that. But it is time that this valley recognizes what people like Kevin has done, the battles that they have fought throughout all time to get where we are today, to be able to stand in a public meeting and not be afraid of reprisal because of who we are, because of our thoughts, our sexual orientation, whatever it is. I ask you really to consider what Kevin's doing and to allow him to come into your community. He's not going to do you wrong. I can assure you that. I think you'll be very proud of Kevin and the kind of clientele that he brings into your community, and I think you'll be very pleased with the business aspect. I don't think you'll be doing wrong in any way, shape, or form. So I just ask you personally to continue standing behind Mr. Morris and his family and the rest of us too, and open up your doors to us. I mean, we need a safe place to go. We need people like you that will continue to encourage us on to look to people like Kevin for safe avenues. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Nick Ibarra.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Nick Ibarra. I own a business, 421 West Main Street. I own a barbershop. Been open since 2007, and I also own a DJ business. I'm a straight man, and I go to Impulse every once in a while. I was kind of iffy about it the first time, but I was like, wow, these people are great. When you walk in, you don't get looked at funny if you're straight or anything else. You actually feel welcome. People talk to you, they smile. You don't feel like, okay, I gotta feel out the crowd first, this and that. It's like people come up to you, shake your hand, how you doing? They actually tell you, it's like, we're gonna be dancing, we're doing this. I mean, everybody comes up to you and very friendly. And I love that. And I think we need that in Waynesboro, where we need a melting pot. And I started out as a small barbershop, and I'm Latino. I come from a Latin background. So my business has grown tremendously that I have not just Latinos, I have Caucasians, African American, all nationality, and I love it. And I feel like I did something good because I'm bringing a melting pot to my spot. And I would love to see Mr. Morris do the same thing, and you guys, show support and be there for people that need it, even for the straight people that just want to go out and have a good time, that want to be safe instead of going to a nightclub where it gets a little bit rowdy or it's just not their style. They just want to have a social club where they could just hang out a little bit later and listen to good music and have good conversation. I think it's needed, and being down here, it's gonna bring more revenue from people because I've DJ'd at their club before. I've been hired, and they have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun. I recommend for you guys to go out and check it out, and enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. I think it'd be really good to have something over here. I really do, and I hope you guys really support and be open-minded like I am, and give people the opportunity to get help that they need, and we just grow and become a family together. That's what it's all about, to be united and treat one another like we're no different. So I think it's time to stand up and everybody come united and give it a shot.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
That completes those who have signed up.
Okay.
There's one thing I forgot, and I didn't use all my time. Can I say it?
Sure. Why don't you go and come back up to the microphone, if you will. I wasn't tracking time, so about 30 seconds or so with that.
Okay, short and to the point. Okay, one thing they mentioned, their biggest night is when they have the drag night entertainment. One of the things up there is there's no entertainment, or did I misunderstand that? that there wouldn't be that.
That doesn't fall under the adult entertainment. When you look at the code, adult entertainment is nude and without clothes. So the code specifies that as the adult entertainment.
Okay.
Right.
Have you ever seen a drag thing?
No, I haven't. But I'm telling you what the code says. I just read it.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I would ask if Mr. Morris, if you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I don't want this to become a back and forth because I don't like that. I don't like anything.
So.
Great. As a drag show is men dressing in dresses and doing a show. I don't know if you've ever heard of cabaret. You have women that dress up as men. Nowhere in my history of dealing with the gay community has any drag queen or drag male king pulled any clothing off. We are a family-friendly establishment. We also have Sunday bingo benefits, which we pick a nonprofit in Charlottesville area, and we do a drag show, and we have families that bring their children to these shows. So I can assure you now, they are G-rated, and they are absolutely fabulous. If you've never seen them, they have 3 or 4 of them go on in Harrisonburg every month, if you can't make it to us. Thank you. And I appreciate your consideration for the CUP.
Thank you. With that, I will close the public hearing. Is any questions of members of council? Okay, is there a motion to introduce the ordinance approving a bar and nightclub use in the local business district at 101 East Main Street, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map 46-2-1-B?
So moved.
Okay, this ordinance and resolution approving the dance hall permit will be considered at the August 27th meeting. Okay, so we're good. All right, so number 5 on the agenda this evening is to receive a presentation by Dave Deering, the Executive Director of the Valley Community Services Board, summarizing Valley's performance contract and consider adopting a resolution approving the performance contract. Mr. Hamp.
Thank you, sir. This evening, Mr. Deering will provide an overview of the agency to help familiarize you, if you're not familiar, with their location and function and mission in our regional area. Secondly, as the mayor described, he will overview at a high level the performance contract for this biennium. And the member jurisdictions are required by the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services to approve the performance contract. You will hear Mr. Deering reference when he talks about funding a 10% local match. The member jurisdictions are working toward a goal of meeting or even exceeding perhaps someday that requirement. It'll be maybe helpful for you to know that the progress that Waynesboro's made since 2010, we've increased our contribution to the agency by nearly $40,000, which is approximately a third increase since that time. So we certainly are working toward that goal. So Mr. Deering, if you're ready to go.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Mayor Short, members of council, Mr. Hamp, Mr. Shaw. I'm Dave Deering, Executive Director of Valley Community Services Board. I live at 79 Willow Lane, Waynesboro, Virginia. I am very sensitive to your schedule of your agenda tonight, so I'm going to go quickly through these slides, but at the same time, you have, I think, all of my slides, so if I don't speak to something that if you find of interest, please feel free to stop me. I will warn you I'm dangerous with these pointers, and I just want to make sure that I can get things going. Here we go. Valley Community Services Board was formed in 1971. We're in our 48th year of operation. We have our mission of serving the community with behavioral health in the areas of developmental services, substance use, mental health disorders, to the citizens of Waynesboro, Stanton, Augusta County, and also to Highland County. Those 3 are the core activities of what we do, and I'll refer to them further. We are governed by a 16-member board of directors. 5 each come from 5 from Waynesboro, 5 from Stanton, 5 from Augusta County, and 1 from Highland County. This is the structure of our board. As you can see, we have 3 officers and then 5 committees. And our funds. very important. We have 4 sources. First, there are the state general funds that are administered through the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services from the General Assembly. Then, as Mr. Hamp just mentioned, the mandated 10% matching local funds, federal block grants, and then services, billable services to the community through any of the third-party payers. The actual percentages of how this works out is the amount of money that comes from the commercial payers, the, if you will, the Aetnas and Anthems and whatnot, is relatively, and federal grants is relatively small. It only represents 3%. 28% is the combined state and local matching funds, and then 69% are fee-for-services for providing services to Medicaid beneficiaries. Our budget is a break-even budget. It's slightly more than $24 million for this fiscal year. We have the same fiscal year, 1 July through June 30. We have, at our latest count, 261 full and part-time folks. About 250 of those would be full-time equivalency, if you would. Primarily all in the role of clinical or direct clinical or supportive. By supportive, that would be, for instance, drivers that would work with staff. We have several facilities. Primary facility is Sanger's Lane. Excuse the flyover there. We have a clubhouse, and I'll speak more to that in a moment. It's over in Commerce Square in Stanton. We have 2 intermediate care facilities. This facility is a residence. It's here in Waynesboro, just above the Cracker Barrel. And then across the interstate is Greenstone. This facility is licensed and operated with 6 beds. This one is 12 beds. Now, this one, while it has a Waynesboro address, is in the community, is in Augusta County. These are for folks that have severe intellectual disabilities and also typically have great physical disabilities as well, the results of cerebral palsy, for instance. They participate in day programs. Obviously, they're not going to you don't want to spend their whole lives in just the facilities. So they do participate in day programs, and we have 2 different day support programs at the moment. One is at Orchard Lane. This is up behind the DMV over in Stanton, and this is for the folks from the intermediate care facilities, and also there are a certain number of folks who live at home with their families, and they will come to this. It's 5 days a week program for activities and also therapies that benefit the lives of these residents. We then have another program down in Stanton. It's called a Community Participation Program. These are for kind of higher functioning folks with intellectual disabilities. They get out into the community more. They're not as physically disabled. And at the moment, this particular facility is very dated and very inadequate. This particular facility is just too small. And so what we are looking at is combining both programs because we think there's clinical benefits from getting the 2 groups together. There's benefits of scale for staffing and also in a much better suited facility that we hope to occupy in the coming spring of 2019. All community services boards are mandated to do 2 things, and just 2 things. One is our emergency services. This includes the pre-screening of those people who are in behavioral crisis to determine whether or not mandated inpatient services are required, either in a community facility like the Crossroads Behavioral Unit over here at Augusta Health, or whether it be at Western State or any of the similar situations across the Commonwealth. Also, we work at the same time when they are admitted to begin immediately what is the continuity of care that has to follow upon their discharge. So that is the primary effort that we are mandated to do by legislation, all CSBs. Then there is the case management function of just serving people that are identified in the community with different disabilities and working with them to help provide the quality of life, just to see that they are coordinated in their life, that they get to doctor's appointments, if they need help with banking or getting to the store, any of those types of functions that you think. So those are the 2 things we're mandated to do. We do get General Assembly monies for emergency services, and as it indicates there, case management, that just depends on availability of funding. In fiscal year 2018 that has just concluded, Valley Community Service Boards, like most other service boards, do many more things than just the two that you've seen. And I'm going to try and quickly go through those so you'll be more aware of them. And again, these are all listed in the slides. We served 1,465 Waynesboro residents, and I'll tell you now as we start through these, if you look at the numbers and try to add them up, they're going to be bigger than this, because frequently one person, one distinct individual might receive 3 or 4 different services, so you'll see that in the slides. In our core services for mental health, medical services, while you might think of physical medicine and whatnot, this is specifically psychiatric evaluations and medication management follow-ups that are performed by our agency psychiatrists and supported by our nursing services. Outpatient therapy is counseling, as you would imagine. Psychosocial rehab, when I mentioned the clubhouse a few minutes ago, it is a social setting. It's where people with mental health disabilities get together for socialization, and they also receive counseling and other therapy and educational type opportunities from clinical staff who are there and serving all the time. Across the entire service area, we have approximately 70 people who are members of the clubhouse, and on any given day, there'll probably be 35 to 50 of them there. They come in, they have all activities all day, they have lunch, and they go out. So it's a very active place. The program of assertive community treatment, this is a very dedicated and focused service. It's led by a psychiatrist and a supervisor who oversees 3 registered nurses, 6 caseworkers, and an administrative assistant. They attend to, and it varies some, between 75 and 80 individuals. They are the most fragile individuals who are able to be sustained in the community by frequent visits. Some are seen twice a day, some once a day, some every other day, to make sure that they're getting their medications. It's a highly enhanced case management function that frequently has been called a hospital without walls. Then our program for assistance in transition from homelessness is very straightforward. We have a clinician who works throughout the area, becomes very familiar with the homeless folks and where they live and how to support them. A lot of the homeless people are not interested. They're just not interested in living a life other than what they have, but they have needs as well. And we try to connect them with clinical needs, and we also provide needs like in the winter, if they need clothes, blankets, tent, I mean, that will be worked that way. These are adult and child services. Our children's services, strictly in these again are Waynesboro. We have 2 clinicians in each of the schools that you see there, and of the 135 students that were served last year, I'm sure that a big portion of the 97 were also in that day treatment program. Developmental services, this would be services provided to people with intellectual disability. For instance, example, that would be Down syndrome, or it might be more of a developmental issue such as autism or late development. And the first that you see up there is infant toddler services. That's strictly a program for infants to age 3, to identify them early, try and provide services to either help accelerate their development or be sure they're connected to services as they go out throughout the course of their life. Support coordination, the Department of Justice said that for people with developmental disabilities, you will not call it case management, you'll call it support coordination. So it's support coordination. It's case management. Monitoring services. Typically, people in the developmental services apply to and get waivers that help them with assistance throughout the course of their lives, and there's always a waiting list. The total waiting list for our total service area is about 150 to 160 folks. 60 of them live in Waynesboro. Monitoring is just a minimal service to make sure that are they okay to the extent possible while they're awaiting a waiver. Then the residential services that you see I've talked to, and the day support, we've talked to those as well. Substance use disorder, we have a number of folks that use our outpatient counseling services. The intensive outpatient program, the IOP, that is a 12-week program. It meets 3 times a week, 3 hours at every session, highly intense on trying to help bring people back on the road to sobriety. We also have, again, case managers, and then we purchase some residential services for people needing to, they have no other way to pursue sobriety through a residential program, and we'll purchase those services. All of the things I've just mentioned to you are done under the auspices of licensing from the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services in the form of the performance contract. Before I start into it, I want to just tell you the performance contract itself, Mr. Hamp has one available electronically in his office. It's about 120 pages long, and has three crucial elements to it. The first is the heart of the contract itself. It is the funding mechanism whereby we receive dollars to provide any of the services I just talked to you about to the indigent people. But beyond that, it also provides for the monitoring of quality and effectiveness of all the programs that we are offering. And it's the heart of the document. It's about 65 pages long, and it's a 2-year. It goes with the biennium of the General Assembly. The second piece is the administrative requirements. I'm sure these look very familiar to you with the operations of the city. We have to comply with the Virginia GAP for accounting, procurement procedures, human resources. We'll participate in planning. I think this will probably be very familiar. And then our partnership agreement simply says that all CSBs, and Valley is concluded, we will collaborate with the central office of the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services in Richmond, with state hospitals like Western State or any of the state hospitals, because we have clients that go to all of them at some point in time, the training centers, and also other community services boards for the intent of just improving the quality of services and the lives of the people, clients that we're serving. With that said, this document, and I know that's hard to read, but this is an overlay that shows the funding we receive. This is the state funding, and this is the total budgeted funding to come to Valley Community Services Board through the State General Assembly for the current fiscal year, about $6.5 million. All told, the 4 localities have budgeted $513,000, and it shows the 3 core services: mental health, developmental services, and substance use, and you can see how the dollars have been budgeted. A small amount of federal monies is here, and they're pretty much in the area of substance use disorder, a small amount of behavioral health for children, and then we have some leftover state funds that we can use for the purchase of inpatient services. What is important to you to understand, and Mr. Hamp made reference to it earlier, is the 10% matching funds, which is sort of calculated down here. If you look at that particular number of the $6.5 million, if you divide that by 9, you come up with the 10% matching funds, which for this year would be $717,000. And you can see we're at $513,000. So what that means is that I, as executive director, will fill out a waiver to relieve us of the burden of having to meet that fund of the $717,000. And the schedule by which all of this needs to be accomplished, typically the way the system works is that the general funding is provided automatically in the first 2 months of the fiscal year, July and August. And it's during that time period that community services boards complete their applications, and also, if required, a waiver form. Because of the late decisions from the General Assembly for the budget this year, we're getting pretty close to being we're about ready to file everything, but it's been more of a rush. Typically, we would have filed everything back in early July, and that's just not going to happen this year. But what happens is you have those 2 months to submit a completed application. And then once that's determined, in September and October, then the department looks through. There are 40 CSBs, so they have a small department that does nothing but manage these contracts and adjudicates them and looks through them. They take those 2 months to make sure all is right, and once they've determined that, then they go forward and assure that our funding then until the rest of the year through the end of June. And that's the process by which we have to work through. So that's very quickly everything, overview of hopefully tell you about who we are and the services and where we're located, and also the nature of the performance contract and some of the specifics about that. So we'll stop at this point, and I will gladly answer any questions that I am able to, and if not, I'll get the answers to you.
Thank you, Mr. Deering. Anybody have any questions?
I have more of a comment and maybe a question. I wanted to say thank you. As a physician, I have lots of patients that have used your services and,
thank you.
and have, I think, gained a lot from them. In terms, you talked about the waiting list for, I think it was the children and the waivers.
It's the waivers for the developmental folks.
Right. How about adults and turnaround on the intake, as I understand it's called, to meeting services? What kind of a turnaround do you have at this point?
It depends on the particular group you're talking about. Obviously, it's not fast enough. When someone presents saying, I need help, they're at that sort of opportune moment that if you can take them in, do an assessment, and then line them up with services, you'll have the best opportunity. We have walk-ins every day. We have dedicated clinicians to do their assessments. But between the two, in order to get very many past 9 or 10 in a day is quite difficult. And then there is a shortage of personnel in the behavioral health disciplines. So we could be in a place where any given day we could have anywhere between 10 and 25 people walk in. So if it's on the 10 line, we will probably get to them. And we have also recently, on the mental health side, we work more with groups instead of the more traditional, or what people think of as the one-on-one type counseling. And by working with groups, we're able to get a lot more people in more quickly. A lot of people, if they're not seen that first day, they might not come back. I think about half of them do. And so what happens is we either just lose them, or they don't come till the next crisis occurs. Getting people into services on the mental health side is a function of the availability of clinicians and the sizes of groups. Typically, a group of 10 is maximum, and you get a full group, it makes it difficult to add more to it. I think on average right now, we're probably getting people into group sessions when there's availability within 2 to 3 weeks, and that's just not acceptable. But we're working hard to recruit more folks. On the waiver side for the intellectual and developmental services folks, some of those waits can be very long. We do get them in, we get them assessed, they're qualified, but it's only the money that comes to fund them has to come from the General Assembly. And like for this particular year, in total, we have 320 people on waivers across all of our service area, and we have been given an additional 6 slots by the General Assembly when we've got about 150 people on a waiting list.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adopt the resolution as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Allen, is there any additional discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Number 6 this evening is to consider approving an application for Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity for GCH Transportation Service. Mr. Ham.
So, members of council, you'll recall that at our previous meeting, we held a public hearing and considered the application of Mr. Hernandez to operate a taxi service. We suspended action or held action on that request pending location of compliant location to operate his stand. In the following 2 weeks, he has worked with, Mr. Hernandez has worked with Laura Martin in our zoning department, and they've established, have identified a lawful place for the taxi stand and office to be located. It'd be located at the corner of 2nd Street and North Bayard in the city. And having satisfied that need, it would be appropriate, if council sees fit, to vote on Mr. Hernandez's application for public convenience and necessity this evening.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the certificate?
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 7 is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing an incentive package to support the construction of a Virginia Museum of Natural History campus in downtown Waynesboro. Mr. Hamp.
Mayor Short and members of council, Mr. Hitchen will present the details and substance of this opportunity, but I wanted to put it in the context that the council has previously considered and approved resolutions identifying incentives to establish the Waynesboro campus of the Virginia Museum of Natural History. Recognizing that we have 2 new members to council and probably a new context given the General Assembly's recent support for the program, I thought it was fitting, or would be fitting, that this particular body hear about the project and consider affirming that resolution of support, including the incentives. So with that, I'll call on Mr. Hitchen.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to update you on the status of the Waynesboro campus of the Virginia Museum of Natural History and to seek your continued support, as Mr. Hamp outlined. The last 7 years, a number of entities have partnered together to bring this campus to Waynesboro. Over $150,000 have been raised with cash contributions and grants to prepare 4 key studies: economic impact, tourism impact, a master plan, and a capital campaign planning document. Those studies indicate that a 25,000 square foot campus would be financially stable and would contribute to both the state and local economy. In addition, they indicate that corporate and private contributions could total $2 to $2.5 million for this project. As you know, the museum is currently located in Martinsville. The proposed Waynesboro campus would be an extension of that facility and would be the first permanent structure outside of Martinsville, helping to achieve the museum's mission of locating the state's collection of natural history artifacts more readily available to all citizens of the Commonwealth. The Waynesboro campus will use a portion of the 10 million science artifacts currently housed in Martinsville and interpret those unique attributes of the valley here so the citizens of the valley can see them. It would not only be a significant cultural amenity for the region, but have numerous research and educational attributes. Using the current museum demographics as a guide, Samura Economics of Richmond, Virginia estimates that the core service area would include 11 cities and counties with a combined population of 464,000. That includes 63,000 K through 12 students. In addition, surveys tell us that 13.5% of the 300,000 people that use the Rockfish Gap entrance to Shenandoah National Park each year would be interested in visiting a museum of this caliber. The facility is expected to have a $1.8 million economic impact annually with a conservative 65,000 visitors per year and provide an outlet for higher education research and secondary school learning center, while again bringing the Commonwealth's natural history closer to major population centers. Earlier this year, the General Assembly included $250,000 in the museum's fiscal 19 budget for engineering and architectural work for the Waynesboro campus. The museum is currently soliciting proposals from qualified firms and is expected to select a firm shortly and produce preliminary work by the first quarter of 2019. Tonight, we're asking for your continued support by considering a resolution providing $1 million in incentives for the museum. The museum project is estimated to be a $10 million project. The museum will be asking the General Assembly for $7 million of one-time construction costs, our city potential $1 million in incentives, and $2 million in corporate and public contributions. Passing this resolution would demonstrate our continued support for the project and willingness to be a financial partner in its success. Thank you for your attention, and be happy to address any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Hitchin?
You mentioned $1 million in, and I want to use your word, incentives. So what does that package of incentives include?
Certainly. For the city, that would be a combination of cash, in-kind, and real property. The resolution, as it states, would be for a new build, so a construction of a new facility. We would be proposing part of the parking lot known as Constitution Park for that. So part of our incentives would be, again, the real property, the in-kind services of building permits, water and sewer hookup, and then partially cash paid out over 3 years during the construction cycle.
How much cash is?
It's approximately $600,000.
Any other questions? First quarter of 2019. So first quarter of calendar year 2019?
Calendar 2019.
So, okay. So past the General Assembly session?
During the General Assembly
During
session.
the General Assembly.
Yes, sir.
So, okay. All right, good. Okay, I don't have any other questions. So, all right. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
I'll move that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Do I need a second?
Yes, sir, you do.
Second.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 8 is to consider introducing an ordinance appropriating permit fees received during fiscal year 2018 in the amount of $2,738 associated with the 2018 Dooms Volunteer Fire Company Carnival held at Constitution Park to the general fund for a donation to the Dooms Volunteer Fire Company. Mr. Shaw.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, as has been the tradition for a number of years, the Dooms Volunteer Fire Company holds a fundraising carnival in Constitution Park, downtown Waynesboro. Our tradition has been to refund permit fees associated with the carnival. This year, the permit fees total $2,738. Dooms is our closest mutual aid fire company. We most frequently use mutual aid fire company. They, I think, generally raise somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $15,000 a year, and I think they put it to good use. So staff would recommend refunding their $2,738 permit fees.
Any questions from members of council? I have one. I only ask, why do we do this every year? I mean, is there some other way that we could just pass a resolution that says the Dooms Fire Department is an integral part of our emergency services and that we will not extract fees from them?
No, you could certainly budget the fees so that they wouldn't have to have a special appropriation. The fees vary a little bit, but not a whole lot from year to year. There is some reporting that we do to the state on any kind of building and other types of permit fees. So we still have to report the fees, but if the council would like to include it in the annual budget appropriation, we could do that.
It just seems to me we have them give us a check for $2,700. A couple months later, after successful, again, we give them the money back. And it seems like a lot of paperwork and bureaucracy for I mean, a future council can rescind a resolution to that nature. I certainly wouldn't do that, but I don't know.
I've always appreciated to be able to tell them that we do appreciate the reciprocal agreement that we have with them.
Right.
That might not always be the fact going down the road,
Okay.
but it has been in the years, and I think that it's just good policy for us to be able to tell them this is our way of saying thank you every year, and that we hope to continue with the way that we've been operating.
Okay. Thought I would just ask.
Just my 2 cents.
All right, thank you very much. So is there a motion to introduce the ordinance?
I'd make the motion.
Great, thank you. Ordinances passed this evening will be considered at our following subsequent meeting. Yeah. Item number 9 is to consider introducing an ordinance appropriating $19,853 of state categorical $4 for life funds to the general fund for pass-through to the Waynesboro First Aid Crew. Mr. Hamp.
Traditionally, we've appropriated these receipts to the first aid crew. Unless there are questions from members of council, I think the ordinance is self-explanatory.
Are there any questions, Mr. Hamp? Hearing none, is there a motion to introduce the ordinance?
So moved.
Great, thank you. Yes, sir. Item 10 is to consider introducing an ordinance appropriating a portion of the restricted calendar funding received by the Sheriff's Office in the amount of $318 to the general fund for the purchase and installation of a graphic kit for the Sheriff's vehicle. Mr. Hamp.
So a graphic kit is simply the decals that mark and identify the vehicle as a sheriff's vehicle. The calendar fund, it's interesting. We didn't actually produce a calendar this year and raise funds. These funds are left over proceeds from previous years. You may be familiar with a large wall calendar that promotes the Waynesboro Sheriff's Office and has messages of public safety and appreciation, et cetera. So the point being, these are not tax dollars. These are sort of fundraising dollars that the department generated through the sale of the calendar.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Is there a motion to introduce the ordinance?
I'll introduce the ordinance.
Thank you. Item 11 is to consider appointing 3 individuals to the Historical Commission, each for a 4-year term of September 1, 2018, ending August 31st, 2022.
So our candidates for the Historical Commission are Mr. David Geiger, Mr. Tom Carlson, and Mr. Dwayne Hill.
Great. Any questions? Is there a motion to appoint these individuals?
So moved.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
There, we'll go with Mr. Allen there. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Number 12 is consider reappointing 2 members of the Cultural Commission, each for a 4-year term of September 1st, 2018, ending August 31st, 2022. Mr. Hamp.
Ms. Tracy Strait and Ms. Shelva North are your candidates.
Any questions of council? Is there a motion to appoint these individuals?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Allen, is there a second?
Second. Oh.
All right, Ms. Anderson. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion, any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you to those individuals for their continued service and upcoming service to the city. Number 13 is communication, correspondence, and calendar.
I don't have anything this evening, sir.
Okay. Okay, just a couple of things that just constant conversations I've had with some members of council. If we could try to shoot for an upcoming meeting, either the next one or the subsequent, for just a couple of items. We talked previously about the status of a citizen university, where folks can sign up and essentially learn about all the different nuances of the city, and I think we would be interested in hearing the status of that. The next is a status of the Community Development Department and code enforcement strategies sort of moving forward. As you recall, the Community Development Department's been in place now for about 14 months or so, and I think council would appreciate an update of those efforts, as well as the abandoned and unlawful vehicles. We just recently passed that ordinance, but I think it's important that when we tell constituents through the city, in the city, that we're going to do something that we follow through with it in earnest. And so I think council would appreciate an update to that effect. And I just open the floor if anybody else had anything else they'd like to offer. Okay, hearing none. Moves us to citizen comment period. Does anyone have any sign up this evening?
No one has signed up to speak.
Okay. With that being said, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Allen, we are adjourned. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.